Episode 3 of the New England Sports Media Podcast features Alex Hall, sports reporter for the New Hampshire Union Leader. We're glad to have Alex on, also a fellow Globe or former Globe correspondent as well. Alex, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I've always been interested in sports media podcasts, so it's great to see you guys doing one specific for the New England area.
Yeah. We've enjoyed it a lot so far. We've got kind of a long docket of episodes we're recording today that will release in the coming week or two or three. And we're glad to have you. Obviously, someone that is in New Hampshire. So our first New Hampshire-based guest. Our goal is to try to get people from all the New England states and all the different mediums. So I guess start off just high school sports are approaching potentially. How are you spending your time right now as a high school sports reporter? Obviously you do other things, but I'm sure that's kind of the biggest thing. How are you spending your time and how are you reporting on things right now?
Well, I think right now it's sort of seeing where all the cards are going to fall, sort of, because everybody's sort of taking, each district is sort of voting themselves about what sport, if they're going to offer fall sports, which ones are they going to do? Some have voted to, not do things like football and soccer, but do field hockey, golf, and things like that. So it's sort of scattered across the state. So it's sort of sifting through what's coming out of those school board meetings and looking through what other news outlets are reporting and trying to figure out just sort of what the landscape is going to look like. Because obviously we'll be starting, our preview season next week or so. And I'm sure the previews will be sort of different in the situation we're in with the pandemic. So I'm sure it will be a little bit of different than say, hey, these teams are looking good. It might be, hey, these teams might have looked good, but they're not playing, so it might be some of that. So it's sort of sifting through all that. And also it'll be a lot of districts are going to do more of a regional approach since the NHIA has allowed like cross division play and sort of encouraging people to just, schedule regardless of division, go with who's closest to you if that's what you feel comfortable with. So there'll be a lot of inter-division play this regular season, which is, exciting. I mean, it's terrible that it's coming in this sort of circumstance, but it'll be fun to see some rivalries that have sort of ended because of, they're in different divisions sort of come back and see some of that.
One of the good things about covering high school sports is the access, right? Like you can go up to anyone after any game or any practice and talk to them. How do you feel like this situation is going to change covering high school sports and some of the access that we've gotten for as long as high school sports have been covered?
I would hope it doesn't change it too much because I think you're right. I think high school sports has always sort of, in my experience, been the best in terms of access and people being, just more than accommodating for you, being, very happy that you're there covering their team or their sport. So I'm hoping that it'll be sort of more of the same. There just might be some distance between the conversations. In the summer, when I've done golf or, Little League games or the Nashua Silver Knights was the only summer collegiate baseball team that we had in the state playing. So they those conversations all ended up being mostly the same. There just was a little bit more distance between people and, people understood that. And it was sort of an unspoken thing, which was good. I'm hoping it'll just be more of the same when the high school sports start. But yeah, I mean, to have that access sort of restricted would certainly hurt.
Now, on top of that, obviously you cover UNH, a college program, and traditionally college programs are tougher with access. Smaller colleges are traditionally easier with access. I guess building off the same question that Liam had, how do you think it will affect college sports? And how do you plan on covering UNH this fall, especially because they aren't going to have any fall sports and potentially they'll have hockey, hopefully. But how do you kind of plan on continuing to cover that school even if there aren't any sports being played?
Well, I think it'll be interesting because, yeah, like you said, I mean, UNH isn't going to have any fall sports. So I'm interested to see what we sort of just, decide to do as a department about covering them. I'm sure, if there does end up being, some sort of, FCS spring football season, that would be something that we'd keep on top of because UNH is part of the FCS. So, that might be another way we might go, or just, see what it's like for the teams that are not playing, but, I think they're allowed to practice and everything. So see what that sort of is like, sort of preparing, for a year plus down the road instead of, playing right now. So that might be some of it. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens with hockey and basketball. I think that I don't know. Me personally, I'm not feeling super hopeful about those sports right now, but we'll see how things sort of play out in the next couple months. I certainly hope there is. Hockey's been my favorite sport to cover in the profession, and I've really enjoyed covering UNH hockey. So I'm hoping I get the chance to do that this winter. It's crazy to think that's something you have to worry about.
Yeah, and what do you think makes covering like Hockey East and UNH hockey so enjoyable? Like I covered BU hockey, and it was definitely different than other BU sports. Like, I mean, what has been your favorite part of covering UNH hockey over the years?
I think it's just the investment from all, I guess just the fan bases for each of the schools, the level of play you get, just the investment from just people who have been out of school for 20, 30, 40 years that come and you see them every day at the every game day at the rink. So I think it's just like the passion there is obviously at a pro level or higher, because there's so much personal attachment if you went there, right? So I just think it's always been there's something different about Hockey East, and I know it's a little bit of a cliche, but I've always sort of got that feeling, and it's been fun for me because I went to Suffolk. We're a D3 school. Like our hockey games were played at the North End community rink. Like, so it's like a totally different atmosphere for me to have to get to experience sort of what the Division I atmosphere is like post college, and sort of see what the differences are, because it's a whole different ballgame.
At UNH, do you find the students, like the current students, to be really into it too? Because at BU, you would get the alumni, and they'd pretty much be 90, 80% of the people at the games. Did you find the students to be really into it too?
I think there was a dip for like the student interest, but I think that's come back, the last couple of years. It is still a majority. A lot of the alumni will be, the most of the people at the game, but the student section has gotten a little bit more filled and a little bit louder. I would say, especially last year, there seemed to be a lot of, a lot of hope and optimism for the program at the beginning of the season. So I think that's starting to bounce back. There was certainly a dip certainly when I started the beat, but it's sort of bounced back a little bit here now.
Yeah, for BU, it's kind of gone the opposite way, I feel like. Like when Greg and I were freshmen there probably 4 years ago, like we would go and there'd be a lot of students there. But over the last couple of years, I feel like it's dipped slightly. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all of a sudden the students can get fickle about things. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean the other UNH sports obviously aren't as popular as hockey. I guess football probably has a pretty good following. Um, how much coverage do you dedicate to the non-hockey sports as the union leader?
Yeah, so my colleague Roger Brown basically does all of the UNH football stuff. I'll come in and sometimes we'll both cover a game, and I'll do sort of a side or feature piece, and he'll cover like the main game stuff. And sometimes I'll fill in for him here and there. But football would probably be football and hockey, I would say, are on the same level for us coverage wise, and we've really picked up the last couple of years. Men's basketball, women's basketball, and men's soccer have been, we've seen more coverage from us. And I think the program for men's soccer has been a big part of it with Coach Mark Hubbard came in a couple of years ago from Southern New Hampshire University, and he had a lot of success there. He'd bring in a lot of international talent, and they had a lot of success at the Division II level. And he's sort of just kind of kept chugging along doing the same thing with UNH. So it's been interesting to see how that program sort of, taken another step. And men's and women's basketball always seem to be in the conversation with American East to some degree or another. So those are the other sports that we cover frequently. And then the others, obviously, we would check in here and there or do feature stories and things like that. But yeah, those would be the ones that we sort of dedicate a lot of coverage to for UNH.
When you guys are covering UNH men's or women's basketball, for example, are the people covering it, are the outlets just you guys and the student reporters? Because covering BU basketball, to bring up BU again, I mean, it's pretty much just the student reporters with occasionally someone from the Herald would come or something like that.
Yeah, for basketball, I do. I haven't covered many UNH basketball games myself because it overlaps with hockey, so it's usually taken care of by somebody else. But from what I just see, in online and stuff, it seems like Seacoast Online, which is the parent company for like the Portsmouth Herald and the Foster David Lee Democrat in Dover, they do a lot of basketball coverage too. So it seems like we're the two outlets. Outside of the students outlets that seem to cover those teams. To be honest, I've sort of seen a dip on the hockey side for coverage outside of our own paper. It used to be there'd be somebody from Seacoast Online, and there'd be myself, and then there'd be somebody from the Concord Monitor. And last year, I'd see somebody from Seacoast every once in a while, but it was basically just me, and then like the UNH student newspaper, and then like everybody else worked for the UNH athletics department. And like that was, it's tough to see that because like you want like, I guess you could say on some level, it's good that I don't know. I guess from outside the industry, you could say it's good to have less competition. Then you become like one of the only outlets people go to in the state for that coverage. But at the same time, it's difficult from a reporter's perspective because you don't have anybody to bounce off. If somebody comes up with a question that you didn't think of for that day, and then it leads you down like a road that becomes interesting, you know what I mean? So you don't have that back and forth with people as much. Obviously, the students will get involved with asking questions and stuff, but but when you're dealing with people who are there to do coverage for the athletics department, you're not going to get the same type of questions you are from somebody who's a professional competitor as well. So that was tough last year. It was weird being the only one in the room, from one of the outlets in the state at times.
Yeah, I agree, because you can't come up with everything. I mean, it's
Mhm.
good to have a bunch of voices in the room to ask different questions. You're not going to think of every single question out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it became. Like sometimes I'd get, get stressed out going like on the drive over because I'd be like, have I really thought of everything? Like, is there anything I'm not, piecing together? And it's like, cause you don't know who's going to be there with you. It could just be you. And it's like, okay, well, like you said, I can't think of everything and there's going to be stuff left uncovered, unfortunately.
Do you do any traveling with UNH?
Yeah, so we do very minimal travel. I've heard, horror stories from, back in the day when about, people's trips back from covering, a UMaine UNH game and in the winter and night coming back from Orono. So I don't have to do that, thankfully. We don't make the main trip anymore, but we'll do like UMass Lowell, Merrimack. We have a freelancer who usually does a lot of the games when they go to Providence or BU or BC. So we sort of get that coverage. And then, yeah, for me, travel wise is very minimal. I'll go to some, like UMass Lowell, Merrimack. And I did Frozen Fenway when UNH was last there a couple years ago, and that was really fun. But yeah, not too much travel with UNH, which it'd be fun to get that experience, but I'm not crying about not making, winter trips back from Orono.
Yeah, no, for sure. So obviously you're from New Hampshire, right? You went to Concord High School, went to school in Massachusetts. Now you're back in New Hampshire. Like, is being in New England something that you think you want to do, like, for your life?
I don't know. Like I've gone back and forth with that. If you asked me that question like a year ago or 2 years, it's tough. I go back and forth with it. I really love the area. I love having the different seasons and just sort of just the overall atmosphere of the whole place. I would like to go out and experience like a different part of the country. I've always been intrigued by the West Coast. I got to go over to California a couple times for student newspaper conferences while I was at Suffolk. So that was really eye-opening experience. It kind of got you a little bit of a taste of what things are like out there. So ideally what I'd like to do is go someplace else for a little bit and then come back and then become one of those old New England guys.
You mentioned that the Frozen Fenway experience too. What was that like? That was what, 3 years ago now? 4 years ago?
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago now, and that was it was just awesome. Like I'd never been in the Fenway Park press box. I'd never covered anything there when I was at the Globe for anything Red Sox wise. So that was a whole new experience for me. I got to meet up with a friend I went to Suffolk with beforehand and just sort of catch up, and then went over to the park. And the only real issue with the day was I remember the ice was like really, it was very, the the weather wasn't working with the ice, and it was very slushy, and the players weren't having a great time on it. But I had a great time covering it. It was just great to sort of connect with and see some old faces from when I would cover things with the Globe. And I saw Elizabeth Thomas, who was also a former Globe correspondent, went to BU, was working for Hockey East at the time, so we got to reconnect a little bit. And I think that was Dick Umili's second to last year or last year. So that was, I was still getting used to, covering, the legend that was Dick Umili at UNH. That was just fun to sort of experience that before he wrapped things up there. And yeah, I mean, it's one of my, top 10, favorite things I've covered for sure. Just, you can't beat the atmosphere of watching a hockey game in a baseball park. I don't know what it is. It was an amazing experience.
And now that we're like in this weird time, looking towards the high school sports season, you kind of mentioned like what may or may not happen. I'm curious, how comfortable do you feel like going to events and games?
Like it's been weird, because like I've had mostly good experiences, but there have been times where like I've been at little league events where I've seen a lot of crowding of people in the stands or whatever, or it's like and for me, like I try to wear my mask at all times when I'm out covering anything. I see some people be more comfortable because they're outside not to do it, but I'm taking every precaution that I can, because like regardless of everything, like you're going to be in a crowded environment to some degree if you're covering a sporting event. So to me, it's like I do feel a bit of uncomfortability, going out there. And I feel more comfortable with golf because people are more spread out. There's less people at the events this summer, things like that. But when I've gone to like the Silver Knights or a Little League game or different things, like it's you try your best to kind of keep your distance from people, but it's not always an easy thing. And yeah, I come back, feeling, you worry about if you had contracted anything while you were out. It's difficult to have to worry about that, but when I'm there covering the event, I don't think about it too much. I just try to keep the quick shorthand things to keep in mind, in the front of my mind when I'm working. But yeah, it's something I do worry about for sure.
Has there been talk like from like your editors or your peers about like as just like a journalist having to go and see like if you see something that is like against the rules or whatever, do you ever feel a responsibility or are you supposed to like report on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't had that conversation with anybody, but it's something I think about, because it's like you want to give people the best, the most truthful picture. But at the same time, there's going to be people who think that you're just like nitpicking things, you know what I mean, and trying
Yeah,
to,
for sure.
trying to, ruin what is a good thing or whatever. It's been interesting, especially because New Hampshire's been more lenient on what sports are allowed to be played and things like that. So there have been a lot of out of state teams that have come in to play games here or participate in tournaments here, and you're having that out of state traffic come in. So I actually did a story that I worked on for quite some time, just sort of looking at that and how safe have been the different sporting events and having that out of state traffic come into the state. So yeah, it's something I think about for sure.
You were doing that article. What types of people did you talk to?
Yeah, I mean, it was, to some degree it was a sports story, but really it was more of a health story, to be honest. Like I talked with, health officers for the one situation we've had sports wise in the state was there was a out of state hockey player who participated in the hockey camp at the rinks at Exeter. He didn't know he had COVID-19 at the time, but he had contracted it at a tournament in Connecticut and then played in the hockey camp. So so that sort of was the only sports related issue we've had with COVID-19, but luckily it was just him and nobody else got infected that was at the hockey camp. But for the story, it was I was talking with health officers from Exeter. I was talking with health officer who's also the fire chief in Loudon, because we had the event at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, the NASCAR Foxwoods 301 at the beginning of August. And that was the biggest New England fan attended sporting event since the pandemic. And, from all reports I heard out of there was that, nobody tested positive or contracted it from attending the event. And then talked with some city officials in Nashua just about how things have gone with the Silver Knights this summer. So really it was about sports, but it was a health story. So I was sort of a fish out of water in that experience of, I'm trying to get in contact with, the governor's office, these town officials and things like that. It's definitely more of a news story, and it's good to get that experience stepping out of the sports world a little bit, but and still talking about sports. But yeah, like it was harder to sort of find a way to craft the story at some points too. I spent a lot of time just staring at the screen, trying to figure out if it looked right or if it felt right, because it's different than what you're used to writing, So it's sports stories are crafted a lot differently than news stories. So it was a challenging one, but it was really interesting to talk to those different voices.
So obviously a huge part of the high school sports coverage is with players and coaches, but also parents are very involved, as they should be. It's their kids. Throughout the last few months, what have your experiences with parents been like? I know I follow a couple of things on Twitter and Facebook here in Maine and in Massachusetts, like parent groups that, some are hashtag let them play, some are against playing, and some are in the middle. Like, as a reporter, how often do parents kind of hit you up and like ask you, are we playing? And, or like, what is the kind of the different sentiments you've been feeling or seeing from parents?
Yeah, luckily I haven't had much in terms of like just random parents reaching out to me, which I'd be happy to answer the questions, but I don't get that very often. I haven't in my experience at the Union Leader, but like when you're at events and stuff, there's obviously people will see your badge and want to talk to you and things like that. There's been less of that, covering things this summer with the pandemic, but when I guess my biggest experience with parents would be when I was covering a few little league games, and most of them were just like let them play sort of thing. Like everybody, the feedback I've gotten from most people sporting wise this summer and doing interviews that are that have played this summer, whether they be a coach, parent, player, whatever, like it's sort of been like everything's going well, we can play, things like that, or in favor of playing. I haven't like talked to many people who have like expressed a ton of worry about it, which has been interesting. I thought there'd be a little bit more of like a 50-50, 70-30 type of thing, but from all indications, things seem to be going, well with sports and playing sports in the state so far. But yeah, and it's been that sentiment from parents for that, just let them play. The kids are happy to be out there seeing their friends and playing and stuff.
And before we let you go, I gotta ask about your time with the Globe too. Like we're Globe correspondent veterans ourselves. So what was it like when you were there? What beats were you on?
Yeah, so the Globe Co-op, doing that was probably the most important part of college for me, and just really starting my career. I did the spring co-op. So I did hockey in the winter and then baseball in the spring. And Bob Holmes was the high school sports editor at the time at the Globe, and like I can't thank him enough for like just he didn't have to he wasn't like behind your over your shoulder the whole time, which I appreciated, but like he was always there if you needed something, and it was always like he'd always say something that you've been racking your brain all day, nervous about something you're about to cover or how to write a story, and he'd say like 2 sentences and he'd be like, that's what I was looking for all day. You know what I mean? Like he was always so great about being encouraging and like just telling you, like I remember like one of the big things I did there was the state swim meet for high schools was in Western Massachusetts that year, was in Springfield. And there was a big hockey game that involves Springfield Cathedral. I know they've since changed their name, but at the time Springfield Cathedral was in our top 10, and they were playing another team that was in that top 10. So I went from the swim meet to the hockey game, back to the swim meet, because it was just, it takes an all day thing, right? So, And then I wrote the both stories in the McDonald's in Springfield at like midnight. And like throughout the whole thing, he was always like, it's fine. Like, just let the day, kind of go along and things will get done. Like, don't worry about it. And so like just working with Bob Holmes and being in that environment, being in a professional environment, especially at the level of the Globe, it just kind of gives you, everything you need in terms of just learning what it's going to be like when you get out. What's it going to, what is it like to work in a real professional environment? And, they told, I'm sure you guys had the same experience. I know they've since sort of did away with the Globe cars, the infamous Globe cars, but you just hop in a car at the old Dorchester building and you'd go to the auto place, get the keys and go drive wherever they told you to go. And you'd go cover the game, so you got all that experience of what it's going to be like when you get out. And without that experience, I don't think I'm where I'm at or nearly as comfortable in the profession for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. We had a great time. Our editor was not Bob Holmes, it was Craig Larson. So probably like, I'm sure it's similar, but also different in some ways because everyone runs things differently. But I loved it. I think Liam also had some great experiences too. We covered different sports. Liam did lacrosse. I did basketball.
Yeah, I was more
awesome.
of a desk guy. I prefer the
Liam
desk.
Liam's like the model hawk.
Yeah, the desk shifts were fun too, though. Like you got to be like you're in there with kids from BU Northeastern,
Yeah.
like like you're just like you get to get all all these different like journalism nerds from different sports journalism nerds from around the city in one place, and
it's awesome. It's like it really is just like the place where we all come together, I guess. That was so fun. Like we always would get excited, like who's on the desk tonight with us, like that type of thing. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The desk shifts were great because you didn't know who you were going to be, sitting next to all night, and it was always fun to hear like the copy editors were always like talking about and making jokes or just being snarky about something. So it was always interesting.
Champ comes over and throws the football, that whole deal.
Champ was always great. I always had a great time talking with him, and he was always supportive of me too. So
that's awesome.
I can't say enough great things about that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's Alex Hall, New Hampshire Union Leader. Thanks so much for joining us. That's episode 3 of the New England Sports Media Podcast, and we'll have plenty more episodes coming. But thanks so much again for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me, guys. Appreciate it.